On Friday and Saturday, Czechia went to the polls to elect their next government. And to almost no one's surprise, given how appallingly unpopular the incumbent government has been, the election was won by ANO, the main opposition party, led by Czech billionaire Andrej Babiš, and generally described as populist in the international press. So in this video, we're going to explain what went wrong for the Czech government, the election results themselves, and what ANO's success means for both Czechia and the EU. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. So let's start with a bit of context. Czech politics is currently dominated by two major political forces. The centre-right coalition SPOLU, meaning together in Czech, and the catch-all populist movement ANO, which translates to yes. ANO is led by billionaire agricultural magnate Andrej Babiš, and was in government from 2017 to 2021. Now, it's difficult to really pin down ANO's politics. They don't really fit neatly on a left-right axis. In certain respects, ANO are quite left-wing. ANO used to be in the centrist Renew grouping in the European Parliament, and in their first term, Babiš implemented a number of nominally left-wing policies, like expanding the Czech welfare state and increasing public sector salaries. Similarly, their electoral programme includes a number of left-coded policies, like capping the retirement age at 65, guaranteeing affordable housing, and more benefits for families. However, ANO have also adopted some policies that are generally associated with the right. They're pretty Eurosceptic. They're generally opposed to immigration, as well as so-called green policies, or at least those that push up energy costs for Czech households. Either way, it's probably true that ANO have drifted to the right in recent years, as evidenced by the fact that Babiš appeared at CPAC in 2023 and co-founded the right-wing Patriots for Europe group last year, which includes other parties like Geert Wilders' PVV and Marine Le Pen's National Rally. Anyway, due to a severe fallout from the COVID pandemic, where Czechia went through prolonged lockdowns and suffered one of the highest mortality rates in the world, ANO lost the 2021 election to the newly formed SPOLU party, which is led by political science professor Petr Fiala and composed of the conservative ODS, Christian Democratic KDU-CSL, and the liberal conservative Top 09. SPOLU won 28% of the vote to ANO's 27% and subsequently entered government with two other parties, the Liberal Mayors and Independence movement and the more progressive Pirates Party. Unfortunately for SPOLU and Fiala, things started to go downhill almost immediately. The government came to power at the height of Europe's energy crisis and reacted by capping energy prices and subsidising the difference, costing the state hundreds of billions of crowns. Czechia's public finances were already in a bit of a state thanks to the tax break passed by the former government, but this energy package, plus increased defence spending, forced the government to implement some controversial cuts elsewhere. They reduced pension valorizations and increased the retirement age from 65 to 67 years, while increasing taxes on property ownership, small businesses, and working people. All at a time when inflation was eating away at living standards, with Czech seeing the steepest declines in real wages across the OECD. This was all exacerbated by a confused media strategy, and Fiala, who hasn't helped himself by stubbornly insisting everything is going fine, quickly became incredibly unpopular. Morning Consult polling reliably had him as Europe's least popular leader, with the latest polling putting him ahead of only the embattled Emmanuel Macron and on a net approval rating of -58. Unsurprisingly, SPOLU's shortcomings have led to a cratering in the polls, and they've been stuck at about 20% for the past couple of years. Conversely, despite leaving office with pretty miserable approval ratings in 2021, ANO have surged in the polls, hovering at around 30% since late 2022. This has translated to a number of victories at the ballot box. At the European election in 2024, for instance, ANO won 26% of the vote, to SPOLU's 22%. And in the Czech local elections of September that year, they won an astonishing 35% of the vote, to SPOLU's 24%. While Babiš himself lost the 2023 election to Petr Pavel, this was largely because Pavel had a unique cross-party appeal, and ANO were very much the bookies' favourites going into yesterday's election. It was therefore no surprise when late Saturday evening, the Czech Election Committee announced that ANO had indeed won the election by a sizable margin, with 35% of the vote to SPOLU's 23%. Czechia uses a broadly proportional electoral system, albeit with a relatively high vote threshold of 5%, which slightly advantages larger parties. And that means ANO's vote share translated to 80 seats in the 200-seat Chamber of Deputies, while SPOLU won just 52. This does still mean that Anu will have to rely on the support of smaller parties in order to pass legislation, but if their first term's anything to go by, they'll still be very much the dominant player in any supply and confidence arrangement. So what happens next? Well, ordinary Czechs will be hoping that Anu can get the Czech economy back up and running, like it was in their first term. While there were widespread concerns about corruption and democratic backsliding during Babiš's stint, it's hard to deny the economy did do better under Babiš, who promised to run the country, quote, like a business, and the economy was certainly stronger than it was under SPOLU. Between 2017 and 2021, for instance, when Anu was leading a minority government, GDP growth averaged at 4%, roughly on par with similar regional economies. While Czechia did suffer a deeper recession than most during the pandemic, which is one of the big reasons Babiš was kicked out in 2021, the post-pandemic recovery under SPOLU has been conspicuously sluggish, with GDP growth averaging at less than 1.3% between 2022 and 2024, the lowest in the region. For the EU, though, the risk is that Babiš undermines European unity at a time when it's most needed. Babiš isn't outspoken a skeptic, as, say, Orban is, but his manifesto promises to put Czech interests first and not obey Brussels unconditionally. Similarly, Babiš isn't an enthusiastic supporter of Ukraine. Though Anu initially supported military aid to Ukraine in early 2022, by June 2022, Babiš was calling for an end to Czech military aid, stating that the objective of preventing a Russian takeover of the entirety of Ukraine had been achieved, and he positioned himself as a pro-peace candidate at the 2023 presidential election, calling for negotiations to end the war and implicitly trying to frame Pavel as pro-war. While this year's manifesto only says Anu, quote, will support diplomatic steps to end the war in Ukraine, Babiš has previously explicitly opposed Ukraine's prospective EU membership, describing it as, quote, a complete catastrophe in 2024. Ultimately, we live in a world where growing geopolitical and economic issues like this are hitting the headlines every day. And while it's easy to sometimes feel overwhelmed, there are ways to stay sharp. And we know that the easiest way to do this is with Brilliant. That's because Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning techniques to train you in the principles behind otherwise complex subjects, and ensuring you actually understand what's going on. With their ever-growing collection of lessons in topics ranging from maths to science to AI, there's plenty to get you started. Not only does each lesson offer a comprehensive mix of engaging problems and competitive features, but Brilliant also helps you stay consistent, keeping you motivated and excited to learn every single day. Take their newly updated science courses, for example. Here you can learn how to build simple computers out of logic gates, or open your eyes to the world around you by solving puzzles with science. Each lesson will help you to develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with key concepts. Try Brilliant for free and start your learning journey today by visiting brilliant.org/TLDR, scanning the QR code on screen, or clicking the link in the description. By doing so, you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription, and they'll know you came from us, which really helps us out.